Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Got a question for you, especially men. Here's the question. 3 words. Who are you? Have you ever thought about that deeply? Who exactly are you? What defines you? What's your purpose here in life? What's your passion? What's your boundaries? What's your limits? What's all of that? I'm going to try and help you answer that question today. He's a men's transformational coach and helps men uncover this all the time. Joshua Long is back with us as our professional of the year. Welcome. How's it going?
It's going great. Thanks for having me again.
Do you know who you are?
I'm closer. I know a lot more of who I am. In the big picture, I think we overcomplicate the question. So, I do know who I am, but the discovery of, making that play out is always a process. Absolutely.
I appreciate your answer and your honesty and your transparency. And then you've made me thought right there, even with that question. Do we ever really, really know who we are? Because if we're constantly changing and evolving, the who we are is also changing too. The fundamental values and cores are there, I would imagine, but there's going to be some fluctuation along the way. I don't know.
Absolutely. Well, I think there's 2 versions of who we are too. There's like the one, like I said, it's really simple. There's the one, who are we? But then there's like the big who we truly are. And then there's the who we are in this existence and how we show up in this existence in our time here on Earth.
And then that's a deep one. I was going to go in another slightly different direction, but I want I want to put the microscope on that for a sec.
Okay.
Explain.
So I always tell people, we're so caught up. We've talked so much about ego, and living in the ego and in our mind and the mind trying to figure out and it getting stuck in comparison with everyone around us and keeping up with the Joneses and, all of that. So it kind of dictates kind of, we feel like we're trying to be somebody instead of kind of just looking in and being at peace with who we are in this realm. So I'll ask you a simple question. We'll kind of use you as an example. Like if I ask you, who are you, what would you say?
It's I'm not sure how to answer, but who am I?
Don't overthink it.
Okay, thank you for saying that. I was going off the track. Thank you for putting me back on the track.
Don't overthink it.
The more you think, the harder it's going to be.
The experiment will be better if you just say it. If you're standing on stage and you had to get up, like, hey, get up, introduce yourself. Who are you? What would you say?
Well, I mean, I could talk. Everybody always gravitates to their job. That's who I am. But that you shouldn't write on that. Who am I? I think I'm an authentic, honest, empathetic person.
Okay. So if we take everything, so authentic, honest, or we'll even use the job since you kind of brought it up. I always ask people, when we're all sinners, if we're taking even just honesty, there's moments that we tell white lies. So if you're in a state of not being honest in that moment, do you still exist? If you are showing up, like we've talked about people pleasing, and I'm doing people pleasing out of like that fear of abandonment.
Sure.
You're not being authentic, but you still exist. If you take your job and if you're not a radio host anymore, you still exist.
Right.
So I always tell people who we truly are, and this is where the spiritual component comes in, and having to believe in something higher than you. Like I've mentioned in the past, don't care who it is, what you call it. But believing in something higher than you is where you come from, that main source of energy. So what we really are, because is the observer to our thoughts. We're the observer to our emotions. We're the observer to our feelings. And this is really where the practice of meditation gets you behind all of that. And so when people like are meditating, they're like, oh, these thoughts, like I just hold on to them, and they go. But you can notice those thoughts. You notice the thoughts coming in, And then you get to a point where you can notice like, oh, I'm not those thoughts. I can just let them travel through because you're truly just the observer behind that, the spiritual being behind all of this feelings, emotions. So a lot of times, like when I get, and this is just a, little trick for everybody, when I get in these moments of getting frustrated or overthinking, I just sit and I do a lot of like self-talk and like through mantra. I am not my thoughts. I am not my emotions. I am safe in this moment. I am not my thoughts. I am not my emotions. I am safe in this moment. And that kind of just brings you back to know this feeling is temporary. Most emotions that show up, 90 seconds, if you just let them process through, you're through that emotion. So you're not that emotion. You're not the thought where you're like, oh, I'm horrible. Oh, I'm horrible. Oh, because tomorrow you might feel really good about yourself. So are you really horrible? No, you're not. Are you really happiness? No, you're not. You're the observer to your own existence that you are happy from this, what's happening around you, but you're not happiness. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm writing it down.
It's depth.
So
This is
give me
depth.
the 3 line mantra again. I am not my thoughts, right?
I'm not my thoughts. I am not my emotions. I am safe in this moment.
I'm not even kidding. I'm right there.
Yeah. I mean, and obviously deep breaths when you're doing this, like reground yourself, check in, notice yourself standing on the ground in the presence, bring yourself back to that adult chair and remind yourself all is well.
So I want to revise my answer to your question.
Okay.
I'm going to say I'm closer to being authentic, honest, and empathetic.
Mhm.
I think that would define me. And you're spot on. We're not always authentic.
Right.
We're not. We're not always honest. Let's be honest. There's always
Right.
there's always could be a little twist of the truth, whatever. Empathetic. I believe I am probably to a fault, and I'm working on that.
Mhm.
And also what you said before, where you kind of look at it from the back end. I got a visual of a stage. And the stage, this is your life, and you're on the stage, and that's you out there. And sometimes you're acting, sometimes you're being yourself.
Mhm.
But when you practice the 3 line mantra, and it's almost like you go behind the stage and you see what the production is all about. Well, that's real. It's people
Exactly.
there being real until they walk out on the stage. What is the stage in that example? It's life.
Mhm.
Are we always being who we really are? No. Again, sometimes we're acting a certain way. But like you said, when you sit in it, you're looking at it from the other side of the curtain.
Right, exactly. And I mean, that's really what it is. And
Mm,
it's not to, and that's why I was saying there's kind of a difference in like, that's ultimately who we are, spiritual beings having the human experience.
totally agree.
But we're kind of living backwards. We're trying to figure out who we are in a human experience instead of owning and knowing and standing in that power because that is godly power. We are very powerful beings and we can totally control our life and our reality when we accept that we actually have that power and we're not diminishing ourselves in this human experience through mind and thought.
When was the moment where you realized what you just said, that we are, or you believe, and I believe it too, that we are spiritual beings in a human experience? I call it a container, where it's a container that we're in right now. And after a period of time, the container doesn't work anymore, like a car, that's it. Yeah. But the spiritual part, it's my belief, is always around, even when you're gone. Those who have passed on, they're around us. If you ask for a sign, specific signs, I'm very picky about that. I'm skeptical. Um, I see them, I feel them, I get them. But what was your moment when you had that realization about we're spiritual in a human container?
Yeah, I mean, I've always kind of been spiritual. I didn't really realize how spiritual I was. And I mean, I've even had people tell me like you're very spiritual. You have great intuition. And until I went through, my own personal journey and dove into it, I never knew myself. But it was that moment in my master program, because Michelle Chalfant, she does teach a lot of spirituality, and we had a week of just tapping into intuition, and really learning about energy and what we really are as beings. And me, like yourself, very empathetic, I can feel energy. And when you really work with, manipulating energy and get that experience, I don't know if you've ever seen like the experiment where you can like feel the energy between your hands. And so when I did that and I started utilizing that mantra, I really realized, wow, I can control this. I
Mm.
am powerful, because I noticed the enlightenment of not letting stress take over.
Oof.
I could let emotions, like if I was sad or if I was grieving, or I could sit in it. It didn't take over me anymore, and it just kind of flowed in and out. And I
Almost
realized,
like you're in a river. You're in a river,
Mhm.
and when you're dealing with that stress, the current is pulling you. The stress, like all over the place. Now, change it. Picture you're a rock in the river, and the river's just going past you, and
Mhm.
you're sitting in it. It's
Yeah.
not affecting you. Yeah, you're getting a little wet. It's just going past you. Like just picture you being a rock. That mantra, I wrote it down. I have another one that I've pilots me, and
Mhm.
7 words. All I need is within me now.
Mm.
And that powered me through a lot in terms of, times of challenge where you got this. All I need is within me now. Even healing, for medical stuff, like you can, if
Mm.
you harness the power of just believing that it's all there, even the answers, all the answers, you
Oh
got them
yeah,
all. It's all sitting right there. They
absolutely.
Tony Robbins is attributed to that mantra. I don't know if that's actually true. Hypnotherapists have been using it for years. And another way they say to use it is say it 7 times, but punch up each word every time you say it. Like, all I need is within me now. All I need is within me now.
Mm.
All I need is within me now. And go through all 7, at least once a day. And eventually you believe, as you should, that you
Mhm.
got this, like you're resilient. You've got your power sitting there.
Yeah.
Love yours, man. I'm gonna be
Well,
using
because
that
our
one too.
mind doesn't know facts from fiction. And that's why we do these affirmations and mantras, because we are rewiring those neural pathways to believe it. And that's why it is always awkward at first. Meditation's always, people's like, I give up. Meditation is a practice. Okay. We tell young kids all the time, you got to practice to get better. Okay. So let's take that on as adults too. We have to practice meditation to get better at it. It doesn't just happen instantly. You have to look in the mirror and affirm yourself and remind yourself that you are all that you need. And you may not believe it the first time. You may not believe it for the first week, but in time, as you build that truth within, that's where it comes from. But you got to understand, you've been through how many years of telling yourself, like, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, all of those negative thoughts. And that's why we say the power is in our mind. You got to take control of your mind.
Isn't it amazing that what you just said, and I love it, the mind subconscious doesn't know fact from fiction.
Mhm.
So you could walk around and be saying, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy enough. Or just
Mhm.
say, I'm a jerk. I'm a jerk. I never get it right. Guess what? You will believe it and you will
Well,
become that. You will become that.
mhm. And that just shows you the power you have. Going
Right.
back to how powerful we are. We create our reality, but we're stuck in the victimization that it's
100%.
all everyone's problem outside of ours.
And I love that you said that. At first, it's going to feel weird. Like you'll say these things, these mantras, and it's just like, I'm wasting my time. And
Mhm.
and then most of us, what do? We give up. We just stop. Yeah, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
do it anymore. That's the woo-woo stuff. That's not gonna work for me before we even give it a chance.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's why I say my first step with like acting, awaken. You have to awaken, and that's why, because I was hesitant to bring in the spirituality component. But as I got connected to higher self, I was kind of guided and told I had to. If I want to make the impact in the world that I want, I have to. Because if you don't believe in that, you're just going to run around on this in the mind. In the mind, this is depth, but you have to believe in something higher than yourself because that's what you got to awaken to. Because, like we said, that's who you are. So if you don't believe in something higher than you, then you're never really going to be able to find who you are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because if you look at it, you always want somebody even to look up to. Like they say, you're the sum of the five people you spend the most time with. So why would you want to spend time with people that I don't want to say are beneath you, but that you don't look up to, number or respect? So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of the same where you have to believe in something that's
Yeah.
bigger than you. So we're talking about who are you,
Mm-hmm.
figuring out who you are. You believe in awaken, connect, and transform.
Mm-hmm.
Can you, and I know there's a lot that goes behind this, but
Mm-hmm.
take those three words and apply them. So you put me on the spot. I'm going to do it for you now. Apply your life and your realization to finding out who am I in awaken, connect, and transform. Those moments, like you just said, when I awoken, how did that happen? And then that led me to, oh, now I have to connect. It's almost as if it pushed you into the connection. How did that work for you with all three of those words?
Yeah, I mean, so the awaken was the part where I had, we spoke in the past where I kind of was in an imbalanced relationship and my ego kind of was trying to do everything that it could. And in that point, I like went through, which is where I found the adult chair and it broke down. The word codependency is learning that definition is what saved me. But breaking down the chairs, I realized, oh, I've been a false version of myself this whole time because
Sure.
now my ego's out of tools to try to keep me safe. I hit rock bottom. And so now I realize, wow, I am bigger than all of this. And I can now, by learning the word codependency, because I don't like labels, but I promote understanding labels to give you a path to look, investigate.
Your reference point.
Reference point, exactly. So, because I never want to say I'm codependent. I'm not codependent. I was codependent. I
Mhm.
have tendencies, but I can control whether I'm going to be or I'm not. And that's a whole other thing of who we are, sicknesses and all that. So I awoken to the fact that like I realized through the chairs, I was a spiritual being and I found my power in that moment that I could really dictate. But it was that acceptance that I had to have before I could wake up to it. And I
The
was forced
acceptance of
to
you accepting it.
accepting the codependency and accepting the kind of the contrary of how I really wanted to show up in the world. I had to accept that I actually was hurting people through all these years behind me, and I had to face a lot of guilt. And so that woke
Mm.
me up like, wow, I can control my life. Now, the connection, that's where like I know I'm a bigger being. I've awakened to the fact that I'm spiritual. Now, in order to connect, and this is where the chairs are so powerful, because like you mentioned in the last episode, it's just so clear. And you realize like, okay, I gotta shed this false version of me. And now I gotta connect. And that's now I gotta just connect and understand who I am. And that's that inner child, that pure soul, that spirit, that just positivity. Um, I had to connect to there. And then moving into the transformation phase, that's the journey. So the two first steps are can be very quick. It's the transformation now that like the transformation is just shedding through that false self over time. And the false self will pop in and you got to understand when the ego's popped in and over time you shed more of that and you're existing more in authenticity of true self and spiritual self and in total control.
When you made that connection and you had the realization of the codependency, did you know why you were doing it? Did you connect with the reason? Call it your past, your childhood, things like that.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could totally see it in my childhood. when I look back at the big picture of my childhood, it was like, oh, that was worst time of my life. I grew up in a small country town. LGBT, I'm LGBT, and so small country town, never accepted, always having to just be somebody I wasn't, take care of people. I mean, as simple as even mom and dad, my parents were young when they had me, and I see, it was always chores, chores, chores. Come home, I wasn't offered love and everything in the beginning. It was take your stuff to your room and do your chores before you do anything else. Well, now you're teaching me that I have to do something before you love me. And that's kind of
Hmm.
codependency in itself. And then you kind of once you learn yourself, you're kind of looking at like, oh, how's my sister show up? And you see her experience and you see your brother and how he's showing up today. And you see the differences and you can start to really see how these experiences do shape us as adults and put us down a path that is abandoning ourselves just for that desire of love and acceptance and worthiness.
Sure. And even code and this, I don't want to say there's anything, I want to say there's nothing wrong with codependency when you realize it. We're doing it for a reason.
Hmm.
And many of us are doing it and don't even really know we're doing it because we're dependent on somebody else. And that makes us feel strong. Like, yeah, I got this. I'm good. And then take the person away. Whatever happens, relationship crumbles, whatever it is. And then you realize, oh, I'm really not that strong. I was because they were there. And then,
Hmm.
then there's a wake up and I guess there's the awakening, I guess that part. Uh, would you say it's hard to put a percentage on this, but I don't know, go like, 80% of the things we deal with today, even finding who we are, it all came from our childhood. It all came from our childhood. Good or bad, good or bad.
Right. Yeah, I would say 80 to 90% is
Yeah,
developed from inner child. And it's not to say, you're not 13 and still get a wound or, as adults, you go through multiple relationships. It
sure.
might have it might have already started way back then. And you think it's coming from the relationships that you had after high school. So you're pinpointing it on those relationships. So I think the belief can grow in strength as we grow older. But I think the root is most of it's back in our early child.
I completely agree. And I've done tons of podcasts with hypnotherapists and counselors. It all comes back the same way. And it's it's kind of unfortunate. Our parents did the best they could with what they had.
Mhm.
They didn't realize I'm a parent. I wish I would have known what
Mhm.
I was doing, back then, the language that I used, even something, you said, come home, do your chores. We don't realize it as a
Right.
parent. What's up? What's going on? How that's shaping.
Mhm.
But where does that come from? Well, that comes from our parents. The stuff they're doing came from their parents and then the parents before. It's all
Generational
generational.
curses. Yep.
There you go.
What we
Wow.
call it.
I could just keep going. Like just like we're slowly
Oh
peeling
yeah, it's
layers
already
back.
been a half hour.
I know,
That
right?
was really quick today.
It's like we're peeling layers back. And by the way, I'll be transparent. When I did hypnotherapy, and that was impactful for me, at least the beginning of my, um, I don't know what stage, the awakening, the connection, whatever. I said right to the hypnotherapist first time, yep, take me back to my childhood. That's where we're going. Because, and not that it was horrible, but my parents got divorced when I was tiny, uh, bullied as the fat kid, all of that, on and on and on and on and on. I knew. I just wanted to save time. Let's just go back. let's
Right.
start let's start there and work our way forward.
Mhm.
But it takes time. Final question.
Yeah.
Was there a moment in your life, and we're gonna run over, but I want to ask this question. Was there a moment in your life, like a impactful event, big moment, that was your awakening, that caused you to start this awakening?
Yeah. I mean, it was literally, I mean, I was given all my it just goes back to that relation to the relationship, the
Okay,
imbalance.
there you go.
4 years, I hit rock bottom. And that's why I'm really passionate about this work, is because I want to try to get to people before they hit a rock bottom. I don't want people to have to go through what I went through. And so it's just open your mind, and we'll talk about pride, because pride is all it is that's standing in the way of us awakening and connecting to our authentic self.
I have some more questions. Like, I just want to keep, the difference between pride and ego. I guess we'll press the pause button there.
Pride is the ego's protector. We'll get into it later.
I honestly want to know, like that. Yeah, seriously. Yeah. Like, because ego, I'm in a men's group actually meeting tonight, and I'm going to use your mantra tonight because they made me the shaman. So, I got it was perfect timing. I think the synchronicity is there. The universe does it for a reason. But ego comes up a lot in what we talk about. I
encourage you tonight to bring your fear and bring your stress or whatever it is, the emotions you bring it forward. Bring it forward. Don't try to push it away. Bring it with you and be vulnerable, maybe with the crowd or whoever you got to speak to, and just clearly say, I'm bringing my nerves with me. Guys, I am nervous. I've never done this. Because your vulnerability is going to give them permission to be vulnerable and realize he's human just like me.
100%. And I always say people can spot a phony. People can feel the emotion, the energy coming from somebody when it's genuine and real. As yours is, Josh. How do we find you? How do we connect?
Yeah, social media, all social media platforms. You can find me at Coach Joshua Long, or you can email me at transformation@joshualongcoaching.com, or just visit my website. You can subscribe and just kind of research there at joshualongcoaching.com. So JOSHUALONG coaching.com.
I believe I've said this before. Either way, I'm going to say it again. You laser and are lightning clear about everything. And that truly is one of your superpowers. All the time, even in this group, same word. I started it. I started this word, clarity. Mm-hmm. Get to the point. And sometimes it's like mixed messages. You get right to the point, and it is so crystal clear and refreshing. It really is.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you for today. I appreciate you. And we'll talk next time.
Of course. Have a good one.
Cool. You too. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.